Welcome to The Blueprint, where we seek out individuals that are built to be the best, giving us tips and tools to excel, taking us to the next level of growth.
Alrighty, so good afternoon and welcome to The Blueprint. So today on this episode, we're diving into one of the most essential yet often overlooked habits that can make or break our effectiveness, and that is sleep. So if you're like many of us who try to power through on minimal sleep, then this episode is for you. So again, my name is Anne. I'm your host for the day, and I consider myself a reformed short sleeper who discovered the life-changing magic of having enough sleep. And joining with me today are Britt, a living proof that too much sleep can be just as tricky as too little. Marlon, a sleep opportunist who grabs rest whenever possible. At least that's what I get from Marlon. And Rita, we also have on the line a lifelong morning riser learning to make the most of 6 hours after decades of 8-hour nights. And of course, last but not the least, we have Devin, who after paying attention to his sleep bank went from just trying to power through a day to being more present and intentional. Wow. Really good mix of our speakers for today. So let's now dive deep into why sleep is essential. I think sleep overall, it actually plays a crucial role in, I guess, our mental clarity, our memory, and even our emotional stability. So, for example, they said, according to the National Institutes of Health, that adults actually need 7 to 8 hours for optimal functioning. And when we're deprived, our brain's ability to process information and regulate emotions drops significantly. So maybe you guys can share, how does lack of sleep affect you personally? Did you notice any changes in how you think or feel when you're deprived of sleep?
Nothing some energy drink can't fix short term, right? But I'd say the long term, it's kind of tricky because the long term effects almost seem to happen in a way that you just kind of adapt to them and you don't even realize it, right? Mm-hmm. So for me personally, like there's always two areas. If I'm not quite feeling right or I'm having a hard time focusing, concentrating, like maybe even thinking through simple problems that normally I would do right off, like memory, recall, things like that. There's really only two areas I go to. It's usually water and sleep. It's usually one of them I'm lacking, to be honest, right? But it's probably, at least it was for me, over a period of time. Like the first night, okay, I get maybe not a lot of sleep, or maybe several nights in a row I'm only sleeping for 4 or 5 hours, right? You kind of get used to it, but you think you're getting used to it. I'm just not as crisp as maybe I would be otherwise.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not an energy drinker, but I noticed kind of like a brain fog, like where you're not really taking in everything as quickly as you normally would, and also concentration ability is impacted, so that concentrating on something takes a lot more effort, I find, when I'm sleep deprived or overtired.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it also affects the way you do things. I remember this one time when I actually had barely 2 hours of sleep, and somebody was like talking to me, asking me like what I'm having for lunch. And I answered him, completely unrelated to the question. And they were like staring at me blankly. And that's when I realized I was totally out of context when I answered. So it was really those moments that like makes you realize that okay, I have to, go back to my habits and think about the time I spend just to rest and really recover. So let's tackle some common sleep myths and habits that might be keeping us from better sleep. For me, one big myth that I have is that, and Devin, we've talked about it, and at one point, but that you can catch up on sleep over the weekend. But there's a research from Harvard Medical School that I've read that we can fully make up for lost sleep, and trying to do so disrupts our body's natural rhythm. So, have you guys had any experience where you tried to catch up on, the sleep you've lost over during the whole week?
I mean, I think I do actually quite a bit, especially like if I'm traveling, right? But I mean, I think there's differences between catching up on sleep, air quotes, right? Like feeling rested. Like I think it'll help your brain fog maybe to catch up on sleep. But there's other side effects that go with it too, right? And do you fully catch up on sleep? Because for me, that's why I call it my sleep bank, right? It's like treated like a bank account. If every night my cost of running my body is 7 hours of sleep, right? And I'm only sleeping 5 hours, then every day I have a deficit of 2, right? Well, when I say catch up on sleep on the weekend, am I really catching up? And then there's more than just being asleep, right? There's different sleep cycles that you go through in a normal day, right? That's going to help your body, your mind, everything recover. So yeah, you might be in bed for that period of time, but you're barely sleeping, right? So you're not really catching up on sleep per se, right? So while I think it's possible to catch up a little bit, right? You might be able to add 30 minutes back here or there to recoup on some of the lost time, but you're not really regaining the full recovery that you would have under sleeping normal terms.
Makes sense. Any other thoughts on that?
About catching up sleep, since I've been working the night shift for decades now, I've actually found that even on weekends, there is a max or cap that I should be sleeping, and that comes to about 6 hours. Anything beyond that, I wake up with a headache and just feel worse than if I just met my regular hours of sleep. And I think that's one critical aspect of sleep, as well as consistency. Is as important as the amount of time that you sleep for. So I tend not to change my sleep pattern on weekends, and just kind of try to be awake, and that generally helps just keeping the energy level the same as in weekend. Otherwise, if I like oversleep on a Saturday, for example, I'll just use the rest of the weekend to catch up until I have to work the night shift again, which is not a good idea, and that will not put you into a good mood. Basically, that's how it impacts it. It's you're less impatient and stuff like that.
I think there's a lot to be said for sleep patterns as well, right? Like you're touching on, Marlon. Like, just because you get enough sleep, if you're changing your sleep pattern often, your body doesn't respond quite the same.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in terms of, they call it sleep debt. And according to the article, you really can't pay for sleep debt because it has costs to it. And when I say cost to it, because it has an impact to our overall well-being. Like when you deprive yourself of sleep each day, that somehow piles up, and it affects your calories intake. It becomes like higher when you're deprived of sleep. It could also cause hypertension and all other health impact when we lack sleep every day. So I think that's really what's being pointed out on the article that I've read, that although we feel like we are well rested after making up for those days where we lack sleep, it still, somehow has an impact to other areas of our lives. Any other myths that you guys can think of?
Well, I know they, talk about naps, and I'm not typically a nap taker. I don't sleep in on the weekends. I tend to keep the same sleep cycle, weekday and weekends. But the ultimate luxury to me is once in a while to have a nap. It's almost like a gift that I think about it, but for me, some people are power nappers, right? 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That is not me. If I have that kind of a nap, then it's like more impactful in a negative way than not taking a nap at all. So for me, a nap has to be like a minimum of an hour, between an hour and 2 hours. So that's why I don't nap very often. But I'd be interested in hearing if anybody feels like power naps are something that work in their routine.
Rita, I joke and say that, there's no rest for the wicked, but you mentioned power naps, and I do something like a power nap, but I don't actually fall asleep. I kind of just rest my eyes, and I know, like, growing up, that was my dad's favorite saying, like, oh, I'm not asleep, I'm just resting my eyes. And I used to laugh, like, yeah, right, you're sleeping. But now I get it. I'll either lay in the bed or like just kind of hunch over in my chair. Don't do that, it's bad posture. But I'll just close my eyes for like 10 minutes, and when my timer goes off, and I'm wide awake again, ready to do another 8-hour day.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've been sleep deprived, I think power napping, as they call, right, like, is a good thing, right? Like, because again, like, just sleeping more later won't always help, right? Because you're not putting yourself in the proper sleep pattern. But a power nap, like, at certain times, obviously do it right before you go to bed, you just disrupted your sleep pattern, so that's not gonna really work out, right? But having a power nap throughout the day, when you have had a situation where you've been sleep deprived, for whatever reason, maybe you had just a bad night's sleep, that happens. You go to a new place, a hotel, or a flight or something, then, or visiting somebody, it could certainly cause an issue. So how do you recover from that? I think power napping could be a good way if done correctly.
Yeah, now that you said it has to be done correctly, because I can relate to Rita. I myself also don't do a lot of power naps because somehow I'm having difficulty sleeping at bedtime when I do power naps. So I think, it's really the timing and the way you're doing it that would, make the difference. All right. So now that we know some of those myths, maybe we can transition to how we can actually build habits for better sleep. Who wants to start?
I mean, I'll tell you what I had to do first. I'll go first because I'll tell you what I've already done that's helped me a lot. And that's like, basically I call it my reverse bedtime alarm. So like, instead of having an alarm to wake up, I have an alarm to get ready for bed, right? And just starting, not an alarm to go to bed, but get ready. And the reason why I say get ready is because if the alarm goes off, say to go to bed, right, and I'm still working on something or doing something, inevitably I'll just keep going right through it. And I'll just ignore it. Kind of like you hit the snooze button when you wake up. It's like my snooze button when I go to bed, right? So the next thing you know, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm still working. So what I've done is set an alarm ahead, and when that alarm goes off, there's basically, okay, now I'm going to stop working, I'm going to stop watching TV, I'm going to stop hanging out, I'm gonna do whatever it is, right? Whatever you're doing, but like this is the time that it's got to stop by, and then you start your routine to go to bed, right? So just getting into a routine is probably the biggest thing that's helped me. So when the alarm goes off, it's, okay, now I'm going to read a book, or now I'm going to sit with my family, now I'm going to, whatever that might be for yourself.
Wow, I love that. How long did it get you to get used to that?
Well, I mean, like at first I just set the alarm for a bedtime, and that I realized that I realized after a while wasn't working for me, right? So, I mean, I guess how long did it take? I don't really know exactly, because it took a while, right? But once you get it there and you kind of form the habit, right? And it's always a work in progress until it becomes a lifestyle, then it's going to take time, right? So you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to miss it one day or not. It's just a matter of having that conscious effort of, okay, this is what that means to me, and this is why I'm doing it.
Right.
Yeah, I think routines are important too. I mean, we've talked about them before in developing or creating habits, but whether it's taking a warm shower, warm bath, or setting aside some time to read, the routine helps you kind of acclimate to the process of, this is the time I'm going to go, to bed or to sleep. So I think for me, that's probably the most important, like just the typical, end of day routine for me is what helps prepare me to be ready to go to sleep.
Yes, Marlon, I could hear you raising your hand.
Oh, I just pressed that by accident, but I do have an answer.
Okay.
I started tracking my sleep. So from your phone and from Apple Watch, you can actually track how many hours you sleep. Like we see data every single day in our job, like in our work. So it makes sense to me to start tracking it and also analyzing whether I'm getting enough sleep, not enough, too much. That's never that, but basically seeing how I'm doing in the running week on sleep versus last week. I try to check that against my target every day, which is 6 hours, hopefully by average. I'm not doing 6 hours this week, most especially, but that helps me kind of be more conscious about the sleep that I'm getting, and actually it's improving it. Started a few months back, and it's something that I always check every day, just like I do any other KPI.
Nice. That's a good point too. For me, what works is actually moving away from screen time at least 30 minutes before bed, so that somehow it keeps your mind relaxed. I think it's kind of similar to what Devin is doing, just setting a condition for yourself that would help you relax better.
Yeah, and remember
Wow.
setting those conditions, right? Setting minimums and maximums, I think is good, right? So
Yeah.
like
Right.
for me, I mean, I try to have, a little bit of buffer, right? So that way it's just not I did or didn't, right? But inside a parameter that I can work in. So if I'm targeting for 7 hours of sleep minimum, then I know I have to set my goal for 8. You know what I mean? So just knowing that and kind of setting that aside is like, here's my window, and then I try to not have a lot of variation, right? Particularly on the waking up time. I think sometimes it's real easy to like sleep a little longer than you should, and then that, to me, I find that it makes the next night harder, because then I don't want to go to sleep because I've slept too much the day before. I feel still awake, for me at least.
It's good stuff. So, maybe for our listeners, let's share some quick tips to them. Like if they want to improve their sleep starting maybe tomorrow or tonight, what would you say?
I would say set a consistent schedule that's going to work for you, right? If you consistency is key. Like I think we've all kind of been talking about, is consistency is important to get restful sleep. Your body will start to adapt to it, right? But you have to pick a schedule that's going to work for you. If you're having to change it every other day because you have to get up early on this day or you have to stay up late on this day, then it's not going to work out as well. So get a schedule, set goals and targets, and then start executing. And there's a few other key points I can make, but I think a lot of you will have some of the same. So
I want to add, just because of the time zone, I know the people in the US don't necessarily have this issue, but especially if you have kids, setting expectations I think is very important. It's just the same as when you're working from home, you set expectations with people in the house that you'll be working from this window to this window. I don't normally have that problem for working because everybody's asleep, but during daytime where I do get my sleep, or afternoons, that's where you have toddlers and kids running around and they want to play with you. But having that consistent schedule and setting expectations that this is my nighttime and I will need to get some sleep kind of helps everybody get used to that pattern, and that helps generally with everything, just because everybody knows your schedule and that this is really your nighttime. You're not just lazy sleeping through the day. You haven't slept. So that's kind of the difference, and that's what makes everybody be on the same page, and that helps a lot because they try to be conscious, not to bother you or whatnot.
I can relate to that too. I mean, my kids, they usually would say, "Oh, no, don't disturb her. It's her bedtime already." Like when they have to do something like in the room, or that they tend to move away from really coming close to where I rest, so that I would be able to have my own rest time. So yeah, really interesting topic for today. So just being able to consistently follow a pattern, and being able to set expectations with the people you're with, and knowing what actually works for you would help to improve our sleep habits. And just to help our listeners build better sleep habits, we are inviting you to join our Blueprint Sleep Challenge, and that goes for everyone in the room too. So this week, maybe we can all commit to one of the habits we've discussed, whether it's setting a wind down alarm, could be journaling like what Marlon is doing, or putting away screens before bed. You can of course tag us on our page in Facebook, and just use the hashtag Blueprint Sleep Challenge, and you could share your progress on our, of course, social media page. So we're all in this together. And again, feel free to share what that habit would be. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Perfect. Thank you.
For content suggestions, please reach out to The Blueprint at teleperformance.com.